In this video, I will be covering, in my opinion, what I think are the top 7 essential tools for beginners to the miniature painting hobby, regardless of what models you're working on, who makes them, what style, what tabletop game they're from, etc, etc. I will be covering brushes and paints in a later video, as this is a huge topic. There's so many options, and paints and brushes are very personal to the individual hobbyist. Certain people prefer certain paints, certain brushes, so we'll cover that in a later video. Before we start, I'd just like to point out that I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not being paid to promote certain products from any companies. Everything that you see in front of you and everything I'm going to talk about and show is I've bought and paid for it. So yeah, there's no sponsorship here whatsoever. So let's get into the video. Okay, let's talk about glues. Now, obviously, with the large majority of model kits and miniature kits being injection molded plastic, you are going to need a plastic glue or a plastic cement. This is the Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. This is my glue of choice for plastic models. It's incredibly strong, it's very easy to use, has a super precise applicator that when the brush sort of stops reaching the bottom because it's running a bit low, you can extend it as well. Simply just take a little, you can pull this little tip up and extend it and make it longer. So that's another really handy little tip. I can't fault Tamiya products. They've been around for a very long time. They make really good products. This comes in several versions. This is the standard extra thin cement. I've also got the quick setting one. Don't use this very often, to be fair. This is my go-to glue. So for plastic models, even if some of them are like the push fit ones now, it's always handy to have plastic cement in case you want to reinforce those joints. This is my plastic glue of choice. Now, if you are working on any form of resin model, now obviously this is a plastic glue, it's designed for plastic. I've had loads of people go, this stuff's no good, it doesn't stick my models together. Turns out they were trying to glue resin models together. So resin cast, resin molded, 3D printed. You're going to need a different glue. So again, super glue. I happen to be using, this is just the Element Essentials. As I said, paid for these myself. It comes in, I've got a thin, medium and a thick. All of these super glues will have their uses for when you need them. As I said, I've just got all 3 of them. Again, there is hundreds and hundreds of options for super glue out there, or CA adhesive, this is often called, but most people just call it super glue. So plastic glue for plastic models, super glue for resin or metal. Last up with glues is the old trusty PVA glue. White glue, wood glue. It's got so many different names, but it's all basically the same thing. It's PVA glue. I got this I happen to have just been using. This is the Army Painters. It came in their Battlefield basing box that I bought many years ago. But now, obviously, I've used it all up, and I'm just replenishing this little handy bottle because it's just a handy little squirt bottle. This is just, as I said, a super cheap school PVA glue. I think this was like £1 from Hobbycraft, and this is half a litre, I think. So it's not expensive. This is really handy for doing your basing. So if you are applying sand or grits or static grass, bits of XPS foam or anything like that, then PVA glue, super handy, super cheap. So those are the 3 glues I would always recommend beginners start off with. Some form of PVA glue, again, doesn't have to be anything expensive. Some form of super glue, again, your choice, wherever you buy stuff from. So PVA, a super glue, and then, as I said, a plastic cement. So we've chatted about glues. Now, how are you going to get your models? You need to get the models off the sprue. So let's talk about snippers, cutters, whatever you want to call them. Loads of different options out there. These, I think, are the Citadel ones that come with, I think, one of the starter kits or one of the tool kits. These, again, not bad at all. They do the job. If you want to upgrade without spending tons of money, you can spend £30–40 a pair on some of these snips. Again, I've gone to Tamiya because, as I said, I think these are phenomenal value for money. These are around the £11–12 mark. These are the Tamiya Modeller's Side Cutters. They are, as they state on the handle, for plastic. So don't try and use these on anything too industrial or too heavy duty. Okay, so you've got your bits of model off the sprue, but they look a bit messy. Let's talk about best things to use to tidy them up. This is a set of just some nail files. I think these came from like a supermarket. I think they come in a pack of 3 for around £2.50-ish. They are double-sided, so you have a fine side and then a medium side. So you start with the medium and then work finer. Roughly, I would say maybe this is like a 180 grit, then probably maybe a 320 for the finer side. So this will just use to remove any little bits of extra sprue. So a decent set of files. These are, as I said, super cheap and do the job exactly. I've got some finer ones. I think this is like a 400 grit if you really want to get down to sanding some really fine. As I said, you can use fine grade sandpaper. For plastic, really good. Resin, they work. Metal, not so much. If you are doing a lot of resin or metal work, maybe invest in a little mini file set. A hobby knife is always a very, very handy tool to have. I happen to be using an X-Acto branded one with X-Acto blades. I'm using a number 11 blade. The blades are standard size and standard shape across. So whether you are buying X-Acto blades or sort of Swan Morton scalpel blades, a number 11 will always look exactly the shape. It comes in multiple different shapes, different sizes depending on the number. These are number 11s. As I said, this is an X-Acto. A scalpel will do the same job. Any form of hobby knife that has interchangeable blades. I believe Citadel make one as well. And then obviously new blades. If you are a younger modeler or a parent looking to sort of support their children's hobby, mold line remover. Very handy for, as the name suggests, removing mold lines from models, and not as dangerous as using an X-Acto blade or a scalpel blade. Let's talk about pallets. Again, loads of options here. Wet pallets, dry pallets, layer pads, like the GW one, which is just like a piece of paper you just peel off as you use them. I would always recommend a wet pallet. Again, tons of options. This is the Redgrass Games Studio XL. We have the slightly smaller army painter. You can make your own one out of sort of using sponge, some paper, like a homemade wet pallet. There's tons of videos out there showing you how to make your own wet pallet. The benefits of a wet pallet: you're going to save money because you can put the lid on the wet pallet, come back to it the next day, and unlike a dry pallet when all the paint would have dried out, you can reuse all the paints from your previous painting session. They come in loads of different sizes. As I said, this is the Army Painter one. Has a nice little brush rack with brush storage above it. Green Stuff World have got a couple of different sizes. They all work in pretty much the same way. You have got a lid. You can put loads of funky stickers on them. A parchment and then a sponge. They all work in the same way. There's a parchment here, and under here we have a sponge, which is wet, hence wet palette. And then your paints go directly on this. The moisture in the sponge keeps the paints from drying out. Very handy tool. Again, lots of different ones available, lots of different budgets. These sort of dry palettes, again, they will work, but obviously just remember that the paints you put on them are going to dry out. So I would always go with a wet palette, but if you don't want to spend a lot of money, as I said, you can make one for a few pounds, a few dollars. Not going to cost you a lot of money to make them. Tons of options out there. For me, a wet palette is definitely a good starting tool. Having something to hold the miniature or the model while you are painting it is a very, very, very handy tool to have. Loads of different options out there. This is the old Citadel one and the new version. Very, very similar. It's a spring-loaded thing, which works obviously fantastically if the model is on the base. Not a problem at all. However, for me, I don't always paint my models while they're attached to the base. So these style wooden holders, they're a really nice feel to them. Very ergonomic. Very organic to the touch. And they've got some form of putty or this is blue tack on the top of them. They come in obviously loads of different sizes. I happen to have got these. These are from a fellow hobbyist called Jimmy the Brush. He makes these. Loads of people make them. There's lots of different options out there. Wood, resin, mixture of the both. But for me, these are my go-to because I like working with models that are not on their base. It makes it a lot easier to get around all of the models. Sometimes if you're painting with a model on the base and you want to get to something underneath or lower parts of the model, the base kind of gets in the way. So I prefer to work with my models off the base. But again, there's no reason why you can't, as I said, use a paint bottle, shot glasses, bit of blue tack or some form of putty, and just attach it. There is nothing wrong with that. There is, again, whatever you're comfortable holding, and if you can get around all of the model without touching it, you're good. You're good to go. Get yourself some blue tack or white tack. Also very handy for test fitting and like dry fitting bits of models together. You can see how the model would look without gluing certain parts on. You can just sort of hold them temporarily in place with some form of putty, sort of white tack, blue tack, poster tack. It's called lots of different names, but again, super cheap. I think this was like 60 or 70p. Very, very handy things to have. So model holders, whatever you go with, there's 3D printed designs. Again, tons of options out there. Go with something that works for you. But again, a mini holder makes my top 7. Okay, the last thing on the list is an often overlooked one, and let's talk about lighting or light source. When painting your models, you don't want to be painting in a really sort of dimly lit room. You don't want to be painting in the dark. You want a good, strong light source, whether that is natural sunlight or an artificial painting light. Now, obviously, in the UK, we don't see much of huge amounts of natural sunlight, so I have to make up with it with LED lighting. Super cheap. Prices have come down loads. You can spend anything from £10-15 up to several £100 for a painting light. I've got like an LED light bar above me. Obviously, the lighting in this workshop is all LED. Some of these like little clip-on. You've got a little clip on the desk. Little halo ring, pretty good as well. And these are not expensive. They have several settings for cool light, warm light, daylight. They are dimmable, easily positionable above where you are painting. So something that's, as I said, very often overlooked is light source. So make sure that you have enough light to be able to see what you're doing, so the colours look right. You don't get eye strain, and just simply you can see what you're doing. It's also helpful for when you're taking pictures of your models afterwards to potentially put on social media, just for your own sort of reference to look at your progression as an artist, is light source. So something is really, really important is as I get the lighting right, it will help you in the long run. But thank you so much for watching. As I said, there will be more videos coming. Please like, comment, subscribe, share these videos. And obviously, please come and check out my Twitch channel for basically what you see here, but the live version. I'm on 5 to 6 days a week, roughly about 4 hours a day, chatting all things hobby and running through issues, tutorials, problems, answering questions. So come and hang out. It's a lot of fun. See you soon.